Hello, it's Michelle again, and today we're going to finish up talking about historic archaeology by looking at metal artifacts. And metal artifacts cover a whole range of things, just like metal things do today. You could make all kinds of different things out of them, and so we'll focus on a few different categories. So the first one is food storage containers. Just like we talked about with ceramics and glass, you could also use metal. And so this is the base of some kind of can. You can see it's kind of concave. And then these little bits, it's all rusty, but the sides, and then right up here, you can see there's some blue and white paint, and that was probably part of the label on this can that was painted on the can. I don't know what now was in it, but at one point you would have been able to see that whole label. And then another kind of metal artifact that we find is a horseshoe or a mule shoe. And these get nailed to the foot of the horse or mule. And these archaeologically, we find them because they're a big solid chunk of metal. So even though they get rusty, there's still a lot of them to excavate out of the ground. But they are an important piece of evidence for archaeology because before we had cars and trains and tractors, horses and mules were how we did things. So if you needed to plow your field or if you needed to go to town, you hooked up your horse or your mule to a plow or to a carriage of some sort, and that's what you use for transportation and work. So horseshoes and mule shoes are really cool artifacts that tell us kind of what people were doing and what kind of resources they had access to. Then another thing, metal, that we find are coins. And coins are useful for dating because they often will have a date on them or a picture or enough information that you can get a little bit of idea about when they were produced. And so this, I think, is a penny. You can see kind of that green that copper gets, but it is totally flat on both sides. I cannot see any kind of detail on this. So maybe it was a penny, maybe it's some kind of other copper thing. But I've got this other coin that has a lot of detail, and I will put some close-up pictures in the comments. But it has writing on it, and it does say 10 cents, and then it does say good for one something that I can't read, and then at the bottom it says something cigar, and I don't know what the word before cigar is. But so this is some kind of maybe novelty coin that you could trade in to a store for something, maybe something worth 10 cents, maybe a cigar, I'm not sure. It doesn't have a date on it, so I don't know when it was made, but it is perforated right here. And maybe that perforation was accidental, but it kind of looks to me like it was done purposefully so that you could put a string through there, and then you could either wear this as a necklace or keep it attached to string as a way to keep it safe. And like I said, a lot of coins have dates on them, so that's a cool way to get more information about a site as well. So if you find a coin and it's dated, I don't know, 1942, then you know that whatever context it is in is either from 1942 or later, because the coin existed. If the context is from earlier than that, then that coin couldn't be there. And so that's kind of cool. And coins also have different illustrations of different people. So if you have a Spanish coin, it will have like the Spanish king or queen on there. And so that can give you different information as well if people were traveling or trading, what they had access to. And then one of the cool things that I think is looking at historic nails. And I don't have any historic nails here, sorry, but I do have this cool sheet that talks about the nails, and I will link to the paper that this illustration comes from in the comment section. But so historic nails, before 1800, they were hand wrought and made of iron. And so that means you went to a blacksmith and you said, I need some nails. And they would take a piece of iron and they would heat it up and they would hammer it and they would form it into the shape of a nail. And then they would put it in some kind of thing and then hammer the head so that you had something to hammer against. And so that was all handmade individually, one by one. And then in the late 1700s and the early 1800s, they started machine manufacturing nails. And so these are called square nails or cut nails. And they're still made of iron. And they're taking an iron rod, a square iron rod, and pulling it through a machine and cutting it at certain lengths. And then in the early part of the time of making these, they then still had to take that piece and attach the head to it. And so that meant getting a blacksmith or someone with those kinds of skills to attach that head. And then later on in this machining process, in this cut nail process, they figured out how to add the heads as part of the machining of the nails. And then when you get to the 1880s, we've started making steel. And so steel is a little bit easier and cheaper to make. And they've got a process now that makes it even cheaper and easier, more accessible. And so we start seeing wire nails. And wire nails are what we see today. So the round shaft nails, the point on the end and the round head. And those were much easier and cheaper to make. And so those become prominent, and that's still what we see today. And so I just think it's really interesting that kind of between the late 1700s and the 1880s, we really, by looking at the nails used in different structures, we can get an idea of when they were built. And I read in another source, you can even tell when like later additions were added to a structure by the difference in nails between the newer part of the structure and the older part of the structure. So I just think that's really neat that we can look at nails to find that information. And archaeologically, that's great as well, because so many archaeological sites get looted, but looters don't often take rusty nails, which is what these are essentially. And so that means that even a fairly highly looted site, we can still get some dating information because we can look at the nails and see what kind of shape and form they would take and still get some dating information off of that. So I just think that's really neat, and definitely check out the article by Tom Wells in the comments below, because it's got a lot of good information in it. And so I guess that kind of wraps up our talk about historic archaeology. We've got a few more videos on different lab techniques and things that we're doing around the survey and that archaeologists are doing. So definitely come back next week and for the next couple weeks for a little bit more, but I hope you enjoyed learning about historic archaeology. I know I definitely enjoyed it, and I will talk to you all again next week. Bye.